Local television stations are watchdogs for their communities, like KUSA TV in Denver, where reporters spent 6 months tracking a scam that preyed on the vulnerable, those facing forced foreclosure. They followed the story halfway around the world to expose a man taking advantage of foreclosed homeowners and desperate renters in 5 states. Their dogged reporting sparked state and federal investigations of similar fraud in other states. It is a telling part of the larger story of America's mortgage crisis. Let's take a look at an excerpt from Keys to the Castle.
Even with a great credit score, a divorce forced Yvonne Araujo into bankruptcy and foreclosure. She thought it would be months before she'd have to move out of her house. But then she started getting calls from a man named Greg Castle.
I thought that he was working with the bank.
Castle left messages pressuring her to leave.
Hi, Yvonne. This is Greg with Associated Inspection Services. We will go ahead and proceed and get our inspector out there and get the locks changed.
Having never been through a foreclosure before, Yvonne did what she thought her bank was asking. She moved out, expecting the place she'd called home for nearly a decade to go on the market. Instead, someone else moved in, a single father with 4 kids.
I was just looking for a house on Craigslist. I mean, he faxed me over a lease agreement.
Even though they'd never met, Kevin sent his rent money to his new landlord, Greg Castle.
Went and looked at the house. Everything seemed, legit. How would he have the key?
Kevin was settling in until Parker police showed up and told him he was trespassing. Turns out Yvonne still owned the house. Kevin had to pull his kids from their new school and move into his parents' mobile home in another part of town.
Single father, 4 kids. They don't really have a place to call home. Yeah.
Homeowner after homeowner told 9 Wants to Know Castle convinced them to sign this document that they all thought was the final paperwork from their banks. But read the fine print. It actually gives Castle the right to move new people in to house sit the home. He collects the rent. Homeowners don't get a cent.
What this really is a very clever plan to try to get people to pay him money for something that he doesn't have the right to sell.
So we went to his last known address in Utah, the same address that Castle used on his paperwork that he sends to renters. His parents met us at the door.
He's not here.
Do you know where he is?
Yeah?
Where is he?
He's in Malaysia.
Malaysia, where he claimed to be when we contacted him on Facebook, before his profile vanished.
I'm convinced that they handpick the countries they want to go to, just because they know it's harder to get them out of there.
Here to accept the DuPont Award for KUSA TV Denver is News Director Patti Dennis.
Thank you. Well, I wish that you all could see this room from this vantage point, because the body of work that we have seen is impressive. And as I look out at the skill of journalism here in this room, we are honored to be here and be a part of what you do and what we do. When reporter Jace Larson and executive producer Nicole Vap and producer photographer Anna Hewson came into my office to tell me about this story, they had that look in their eye, the one that says, we're on to something. And I know that when they're on to something, it usually means we need to consider time, money, and lawyers. And that was true. And they know that when I get tense about the stories that they're working on and start asking questions, I have this sort of strange habit of whipping out my lipstick and I start painting it on and I start asking questions. They make fun of me for doing this. It's kind of a silly thing. I ate a lot of lipstick on this story. Greg Castle had the perfect plan, but what he didn't count on was one very tenacious reporter named Jace Larson, who simply wouldn't give up. And Jace and Anna and Nicole worked the internet, they worked contacts, they worked law enforcement, and they put together piece by piece, connecting the dots to where Greg Castle was and what he had done. And he had done it to hundreds of families. And we all know that the foreclosure market and the housing market right now is ripe for victims. And Jace and Nicole and Anna have been zealots for foreclosure, fraud, and housing scams. So we found Greg Castle in Malaysia, and a little bit after we found him, the feds found him, brought him back to the States, and he was prosecuted. He's now in prison in the Seattle area. So I'm very proud of what they've done. We're very proud and honored to be here tonight. And so we're going back to Colorado this weekend, and we have 8 stories that we're working on right now, 8 really good stories. And I'd like to say that we will use every bit of the DuPont Award and what it stands for as we measure those stories and produce them. And I'd like to tell you what those stories are about, but I can't. But I will tell you, I've already whipped out the lipstick. Thank you very much.